And welcome back to Morning Shot. If you like the work we do here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help us grow the viewer count. And don't forget, you can go on our website and buy the Morning Shot official blend. With me today, I have Kenneth Meshoe, who is the head of the ACDP. Hi, Kenneth. Can you hear me at all?
Yes, Baron, I can hear you now.
Perfect, perfect. So I know you got another meeting to go off to, so I'll start off with the questions very quickly. So the ACDP was founded in 1993, just at the dawn of democracy in South Africa. Were you involved in the founding of it, and why did you found it?
I was definitely involved. Actually, I initiated that. I felt an urge to participate in the making of my future and the future of my children.
Yeah.
And one of the most important things to do was to be involved in laying the foundation, which is the constitution of the country. When I looked around, I was not happy with what I was seeing, the political parties that I was seeing, because those that were led by black people were in agreement or involved in violence. And as a Christian, I did not want to be involved in violence. I had opportunities to join the ANC, but it was because of the violent nature that I felt I could not. All right. But secondly, I looked for a party that would protect my religious freedoms, because freedom of religion for all parties is very, very important. And South Africa is a very religious country. And so I take my faith very seriously. So that was the second thing I wanted to ensure, that I have the freedom and the liberty to serve and to worship the God I believe in. But thirdly, I was looking for the word respect, the emphasis of the word respect. And I didn't see much of it in what others were saying. And
Mm,
I believe that if we don't respect one another, it's easy for us to destroy one another. So,
mm.
because they were not talking about the respect, I believed that there has to be respect. And as a Christian, I thought there must be respect for God, respect for self, respect for one another, and also respect for property, which I did not see. But the last one, the issue of responsibility. I was hearing people talk about human rights, human rights, human rights. And I said, but what about responsibilities? Because human rights must be balanced with human responsibilities. When you look at many children today, they are very, very irresponsible. They are irresponsible. Many of them don't even help with household chores, at home, because they are in the streets all the time, in parties and all this stuff. And I thought, hey, I wouldn't want to be quiet. And I wouldn't want my opinions not to be mentioned. So we have to start a Christian party that will also have a voice to ensure that some of these things I've raised are also protected.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a good few points in there, and so I thought I would actually touch on some of the ACDP's policies and just see how they align with a lot of the what the viewers think. Obviously, when people vote for a party, it's the policies that they vote on, and there's a few things there that are really important. So the first you touched on is around property rights in South Africa. So I know the ACDP had a view on expropriation without compensation. What was your view on it?
Um, we believe everybody has the right to access to property. All of them must have access. And well, during apartheid, we are not allowed to own property in some areas, in white areas. But now in the new dispensation, everybody must have the right to access property anywhere they want to. All right.
Yeah.
So that was one of the important things. We heard that Kosatu those days was very vocal, saying the constitution must not protect property rights. That was COSATU. They were saying we don't want to protect property rights. ANC was divided on that. There were some who said let's protect property rights. Some were saying no, that's the more aligned with the COSATU, saying no, let's not protect it. So we also had to enter and say property. If a person has property, that person must have the right to own that property, not just to lease, not just to be a leasee, or not just to be it must belong to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the issue obviously had to be debated, because people felt that there their properties were stolen, their properties must be given back. And we looked at some of the properties they were talking about. There were properties that were in use. There were properties that were even helping with the economy of the country, properties that were productive. And so we thought the people who own those properties invested in them. So it would not be fair to say, take away those properties without considering the investments of those people. That's why we said when we talk about compensations of people, we are immovable there. When people are saying, let's take back the land from the former colonialists, we say, well, we may agree, but remember, they invested money there and let them be compensated. It's not fair. Let them be compensated. And obviously, there were those who were arguing, no, they stole it, they stole it, they stole it. We said, but prove, because some of them have documents to show that they paid, they took loans to pay to buy those properties. So you cannot just take it away from them and expropriate it without compensation. So we still believe today that everybody has the right to access to property. If anybody says that property belongs to them, the courts must settle that. It cannot just be taken by government by force, because if government is allowed to do that, what else will it take by force from human beings? The courts are there to mediate. The courts are there to make sure that everybody has access to justice. Everybody is treated justly and fairly. That's why the ACDP was very strong on expropriation with compensation.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting that one of the things you referenced there was that the black ownership during apartheid was prohibited. And we've covered, or we've done a few interviews on this channel over the last couple of weeks around gun-free South Africa and the Firearms Amendment Bill, which was seeking to take away the ability for the average individual to own a firearm for the purpose of self-defense. I know the ACDP had a view on this as well. What's your view on taking away firearms for the purpose of self-defense?
Self-defense is a right, a constitutional right, I believe. And so if a person feels that they need a weapon, a gun to protect themselves, it must be that person's choice. To take away guns from everybody and allow the criminals to own guns would be suicidal. We cannot allow gangs and criminals to own guns when people who are law-abiding become at the mercy of them. These guys can rob them, these guys can kill them, these guys can do anything without these people being able to defend themselves. So it is important that people consider what's happening in South Africa. Those who are saying gun-free South Africa, personally, I think they're short-sighted and they're unrealistic, because there are many guns that are imported into South Africa illegally. They are imported. Our borders are porous. If people are saying the police will stop them, the police in South Africa are stopping nothing. Guns are coming to South Africa almost on a daily basis. Drugs are coming to South Africa almost on a daily basis. So if gangs and thugs know that these people are not armed, I promise you they will terrorize us all. So people must have the right to protect themselves and their families.
Yeah, we covered a story this morning around a police station in Mpumalanga that was that was robbed, and the police station lost all their firearms because they were held at gunpoint.
Byron, may I say something there? Now, if thugs can rob a police station, knowing that the police station has guns, what more about your house and my house that don't have guns?
I
They
agree.
will come in without fearing anybody. So we cannot allow a situation where people sit in their homes like lame ducks who cannot protect themselves when we have such a violent criminals in South Africa.
Yeah, but I suppose, one of the concerns is that a lot of, like Gun-Free South Africa is a good example. It's being funded by a lot of European foreign NGOs. They're getting a lot of kind of funding from the World Economic Forum, from the Open Society Foundation, which is the George Soros Foundation.
George Soros, yeah.
And it seems like a lot of the policies that are being pursued in South Africa aren't really South African policies. They seem to be foreign policies being implemented onto the South African people as if we're somehow still a foreign colonial kind of country, and we're not. What's your view on that?
You know, that is one of the reasons we are critical of our government. We have leadership that doesn't think for themselves.
Yeah.
Now, when we saw what was happening, even with the vaccines, they took money. Okay, maybe before I go there. In the earlier days, this was public knowledge. It was in the media that scientists were very curious to know why infections in Africa were lower than infections in the so-called first world countries, Europe and America, when they had more access to vaccines. And Africa, that did not have access to them, had very low infections. Okay? They had low. Now, if African leaders were thinking for themselves, they would have said, this is a clear sign that we are doing something right, that those Europeans with higher infection rates are not doing. It means these natural remedies we are using on the African continent are able to assist us, because the numbers that Africa had lower infection rates. So now, even though they have these numbers, they still went to them and said, we want those vaccines that are not protecting you, and we are going to leave our health remedies, natural remedies that we are using that are effectively protecting us. If to an extent that scientists were bothered by that. They wanted to know how come. And if I was an advisor to the South African president and African presidents, I would say, guys, these people with numbers are so high are doing something that you must avoid.
But I think
I would have said that.
So I think Thabo
But
Mbeki.
our guys and sorry.
I said so. I think Thabo Mbeki kind of famously said, like, African solutions for African problems.
It is correct. There are areas where we need European solutions, but there are also areas where Africans can be confident that they themselves can have solutions.
Yeah.
Now, how do you answer the question? Why are people with easier access to vaccines getting more infections than people who have no access to vaccines? It means they're using something that is workable, that is useful, that is effective. So unfortunately, African leaders think everything good comes from Europe. I used to think like that, no more.
Yeah. No, and I agree.
No more.
I agree. Which actually nicely comes on to the next question, which is actually around the NHR. So the government is still very keen on, the centralized idea of controlling the NHR. And we're seeing the NHS in the UK fall apart on a daily basis. I mean, it's understaffed, it's under budget. And they're a first world country with some rather remarkable funds, and they can't fund their own health system. What's your view on the government's idea behind NHR?
Unfortunately, they are acting like puppets. They don't look at facts. While they know that centralizing health is not working, coming with a centralized insurance for everybody, it's not working in the UK. It's not working in other countries. Why will it work in South Africa? It does not work, particularly because our tax base in South Africa is very, very low. Where will you get the money to fund such a scheme? Are you going to borrow again and make South Africa one of the countries that borrows more than they can produce? Spend more than they can produce? Okay, our production is very, very low in South Africa. So this thing of free insurance, free treatment, free education, free, it sounds good, but in reality, it's unaffordable. So NHI won't work in South Africa. These guys are fooled if they believe it will work. Somebody fooled them, or they're just following their masters who are overseas, but it will not work.
So
That's why the ACDP will not support it.
So the current estimation is that the NHR bill was written. This is the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory is that the NHR bill was basically being led by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who's obviously pledged rather significant support to the South African health system. But obviously they're quite keen, as you know, Democrats in the US, as having this idea of a national health system, which is similar to what they'd call the Obamacare. But it's a struggle to see how it would work in South Africa. As you say, the tax base is shrinking, and it's like, how are we going to afford it? But that doesn't really seem to stop the government saying that they're going ahead with it regardless. What can be done to stop it?
People must read and compare experiences of different nations. South Africa, we only allow the media to feed us without us making our own research. And for as long as South Africans want to be fed, spoon-fed, without them making researches, then we are going to be in trouble. People need to understand that governments all over, they prefer to be like a Father Christmas. Give everybody everything free of charge, knowing that when you do that, you are going to depend on government and you'll never be independent. You're going to be dependent on government for everything. And if you're dependent on government for everything, they are going to control you. They will tell you where to go and where not to go, what to eat and what not to eat. What we experienced during that harsh lockdown will be part of everyday life, where somebody decides for you when you can travel, where you can go, where you cannot go. And this, I believe, is wrong, because individuals must have the right to choose. Individuals must be empowered to be independent and not dependent on the state. So the Democratic Party is a liberal organization that wants people to rely on them for everything, which is not good for us. When God made human beings, he gave us hands to use so that we can be productive and so that we can be self-reliant. South Africans must look forward to the day where they are self-reliant and not just reliant on government all the time. You must be self-reliant. So we have to inform people, try to educate people. And unfortunately, these days it becomes difficult because many people are getting used to being given free, everything being free. Something that I may say that is controversial in some circles. There are some employers who prefer labor that comes from outside. And many of them, it's not because of cheap labor. When you look at productivity, how many of some of these people are willing to work long hours? Then you realize this could be one of the reasons. This could be one of the reasons. A person who's used to be given everything free of charge is not as productive like a person who has been taught hard work pays. ACDP believes we must encourage hard work. Our young people should be taught, and we are telling our young people hard work. God will bless the works of your hands and not laziness or just demanding everything.
I'm in complete agreement with that. A lot of people say the idea of hard work and that is a white Western European idea, but it's not. It's actually a Protestant idea. It's a Christian idea, and it has always been. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin, which actually comes on quite nicely on. Which comes on to the next question, which is, as you know.
May I say something? May I just throw in something before I come to the next question?
Of course.
Africans who did not even have any, who are not even influenced by Western religions even, would wake up 4 a.m., go into the fields. They would be in the fields the whole day, go home in the evening, doing this 7 days a week. Our culture teaches and encourages hard work. Those who are saying hard work comes with the Europeans are lying. We have lost something very important. And I think politicians allowed the Westerners to influence them, to undermine hard work so that they would rely on them. Now, the more African leaders go overseas with begging bowls to ask for loans, to ask for grants, ask for money, that is exactly what they wanted, so that African leaders can be reliant on Western leaders. And this has to change.
A lot of that seems to kind of come from, from certainly from where I sit and the type of things that I see. A lot of it seems to kind of come on the African idea, and a lot of African liberation struggles all seem to align themselves with Marxist kind of communist ideas, and they all seem to have this idea of, a socialist Africa, as if that's somehow going to fix everything. And wherever socialism or communism is tried in the world, it seems to bankrupt the countries pretty fast and
Correct.
makes the people very reliant on the governments, which, for all intents and purposes, like Zimbabwe is a good example. It suited ZANU-PF because now they've pretty much been in power since, the liberation. And I think that the ANC would like to see something happen very similar with them. As Jacob Zuma very famously once said, the ANC will rule until Jesus comes back. So, it's kind of like it's their idea of, their attachment to kind of communism and socialism that seems to keep Africans in poverty. And for some reason, it never kind of, like, the penny never seems to drop, and it's always somebody else's fault. It's never the government policy,
No, it is true. The South African government is influenced by China a lot. They have a relationship with the Chinese executive, what do they call it? The Executive Council of China.
CCP.
They have a CCP, correct. All right? They have a relationship with them. So they are being influenced. I see a post sign. Where does it come from?
No, you're still live. Go for it.
All right. Yeah. So we are influenced by China because of their communist and socialist ideologies. Now, because of this ideology, China is also abusing their labor. Their labor, they pay their people peanuts. And it's interesting to know that our government will never say anything about that.
No.
They will never talk about wages. They'll never talk because they are creating a dependency syndrome. And that's what the ANC also wants to do. They were trained by China, many of them, and they are now being guided by China again.
Yeah.
We cannot, our prices obviously cannot, our wages cannot compare with China. That's why many of our manufacturing plants are shut down, because they are so cheap. They are using cheap labor. They are abusing their own people. But in South Africa, our people have rights to fair labor, fair wages, something that's not in China. And if this change, I promise you, if South Africa can be taken over by the communists, all the people who are earning well, they are going to lose their salaries because they would have to depend on the state. That's what this government wants to do, and that's what South Africans must say no to that. We grew up. When I was a child at school, we would do gardening. We would be encouraged in primary school. We'd be encouraged to do the same at home. We grew up working. I once saw a video of a primary school classroom in Japan. Primary school kids cleaning their own classrooms. And yet, when it comes to results, mathematics and science, they beat South African children who never work. They lied. When the Children's Act came into being, they said children must focus on their studies. They must not be involved in labor. Even at home, they must not do anything. This has destroyed our children, the future of our children. They can't do anything for themselves, which is wrong, and which the ACDP want to see corrected. From young, children must be taught to work with their own hands. They must be taught to clean where they stay, where they eat, to clean everything themselves. Our classrooms are dirty. Our You look at school premises, everything is just dirty. When I was in primary, we were the ones who were cleaning our own yards, cleaning our own classrooms. And those were the days because the children then were responsible. Not irresponsible, but they were responsible.
So, I mean, it's always interesting that the Chinese argument is always an interesting one because you do wonder, like, Kusatu and a lot of the government always will tell us that they want to emulate the Chinese model. And it's like, I can't imagine any of the Kusatu members wanting to work in Chinese level conditions. I can't see that happening. So it's interesting that they're always so keen to kind of emulate those kind of ideas. It doesn't make sense.
If I may ask you for a favor, unless if you have something readily available, an article readily available, where South Africans or government say they want to emulate the Chinese model, please send it to me.
I will
I'll
certainly
say
do
something
so.
about that. I'm going to say something. Yeah.
Do you remember that they announced that they were also partnering with the Chinese to do leadership training so that we could better copy the Chinese model? I'll find you the news article, but it's the government.
Yeah.
The government thinks they're going to get Chinese training.
We don't want the Chinese model.
No.
If there's a model we want, if there is an example or partnership we want, there is a country called Rwanda, the cleanest country on the African continent. The people are hard workers. You know, I went to visit with my colleagues 2012. We went to Rwanda. And because we were told how clean that country was, from the airport to our hotel rooms, we were looking for papers. And I'm not joking, looking for papers in the streets. We didn't see any paper. And maybe to shock you further, we were in a hotel where we stayed. We did not see flies until I said to my wife, let's look for flies. Could not see one fly. Everything clean. The people working hard. Once a month, the community goes out to work in their communities. They clean their communities. Banks open late. When it is work day, even the president and members of his cabinet, they are seen in the streets cleaning their country. This is what South Africa needs. People taking responsibility for their environment, responsibility for what they have, rather than want to go to China where government promises going to do everything for you. It will not work. Government cannot do everything for anybody.
Yeah, so I think Rwanda has now taken over the most productive country in Africa's title, and I think they can now have one of the strongest economies. So, yeah, I'm quite aware of the turnaround that Rwanda has had, obviously from the genocide to today, and the turnaround is remarkable.
It's remarkable. It is remarkable. People must go and see for themselves and say, we want to be as clean. I mean, we have resources in South Africa that Rwanda does not have. And yet Rwanda is doing better than South Africa. Why? Because of this socialist and communist mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Which actually brings me on to the next question, which is, as you know, South Africa is experiencing a massive drain, a brain drain with a lot of immigration, especially people that are, a lot of the white people have left. But I think people are under the mistaken idea that it's only the white people that are leaving. But I think according to the current statistics, it's actually a lot of the black professionals who become qualified, they leave as well and go to European or Australian countries. A lot of them because they have nursing qualifications or trades. And what we're also seeing, which is also where the Western world's a little bit mistaken, is that the current estimations are that more Britons move to South Africa than South Africans move to Britain. What's your view on the future of white people in the country and immigration as a whole?
Something interesting that I will tell you that many of my brothers of my color and your color don't like, but which I believe to be true. If you look on what's happening on the continent, except for Rwanda, obviously. You look at Zimbabwe, you look at Mozambique, you look at the DRC, one of the wealthiest countries on the continent. Their infrastructure is very bad, if not has collapsed. Something that white people are doing better than us, black people, is how to maintain what you have. Just for interest's sake, if you go into a suburb that is mixed, in general, you are able to say, here you still have a white man, here you have another person of another color who has come in, because of the issue of maintenance. The buildings that we see on the African continent. I went to the DRC a few years ago, and we were told that some buildings last had paint 30 years ago. They got paint. They were painted when they were still under the colonialists. You listen to what members of parliament who are staying in parliamentary villages are saying. You would be shocked.
Yeah.
If you want to see for yourself, I can bring you to Acacia Park and say Acacia Park and other villages, they are a shadow of what they are, what they used to be. Why? Because they were maintained then. Today, they are not maintained. So now, if we lose the skills of the people who were good at maintenance, ESCOM, what's the problem? They will tell you lack of maintenance. Okay? You look at the streets, look at sewage, how dirty the place is because of lack of maintenance. So I think South Africans are shooting themselves in the foot to say it must only be black people, white people must leave. We want to build South Africa, and for us to have a best nation on the continent, we need everybody, regardless of the color of their skin. We must come to a stage where we move away from this color thing and say we are all South Africans. Let us build the country together so that South Africa can be a model for other nations to follow. We have the potential as a nation, but we must recognize that we need everybody. It was not a mistake that God allowed Indians, coloreds, and white people from different European countries to be together here. If we can join hands and work together, I promise you, sir, this is a beautiful country, and we can make it to look much better and to be even much more prosperous than we have ever experienced.
Yeah. So
but we need everybody.
So with that being said, I mean, a lot of people cite when we speak to them, why are you leaving? A lot of them say that they don't have hope for the future. It seems like hope is being lost in a lot of places in the country. And, you know, the president seems to keep pushing forward with more BEE, affirmative action, and race-based type policies. And obviously more communist and socialist kind of central control ideas. What would the ACDP do differently if you won the presidency? How would you install hope in people and encourage them to stay?
Well, firstly, we will be ruthless to those who are corrupt. That's the first thing. Ruthless, deal with corruption ruthlessly. Number two, we'll ensure that the country is safe. Our streets are safe. That we become hard on criminals. Criminals in South Africa, they get a smack on the wrist. And they're living comfortably. 1996, I wrote a document on crime eradication strategy. I offered it to the ANC. One journalist said to me, he said, even though I don't agree with everything in your document, particularly capital punishment, he said, I know that if everything that is in this document can be implemented, we'll deal effectively with crime. Okay? Until today, one of the things we said was, prisoners or criminals should not eat mahala or free and sleep mahala, free, and not do anything. Get them on the farms, get them on the roads, let them work, let them offer cheap labor so that they pay for their boarding and lodging.
Yeah.
Okay? Things like this would cause people to say, hey, I don't want to do that. Now, when you are ruthless with criminals, with crime, and then
Oh, we seem to have lost him.
okay.
Welcome back, Kenneth. I see you got an incoming call there, but you're back live now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hope can be restored. The people need to know that government is on their side. Government honors law-abiding citizens and they protect them. They don't defend criminals. I always find it funny and unfortunate and also unfair that a person who'd commit a crime would go and get free legal aid, but the victim doesn't get free legal aid. We would never agree with something like that. We would want whistleblowers to be protected and to be friends of government, because we know that if something wrong happens and a whistleblower says, hey, this is happening, they are going to be protected. And when they are protected, they will have courage to come forward and report crimes that are taking place. We will not do what the current policemen are doing. We have a lot of corrupt policemen who protect one another. So what we'll do, we will bring in the old retired policemen, detectives, those who knew how to keep streets clean and also safer. We'll bring them back and say, guys, we want to deal with criminality. Remove criminality. Let all those who are law-abiding enjoy a better life and not the criminals. Today is criminals who seem to be favored more than the law-abiding citizens. So the ACDP will make sure that those who are law-abiding, if there was time, I was going to tell you my experience in Brazil, but that's for another day.
Of course. So I got two more questions. They shouldn't take too long. So the first is obviously what we're seeing in the Western countries, and it's something that's starting to infect South Africa, is this idea of gender ideology, and obviously we're seeing the erasure of the idea of the woman. What's your view on this gender stuff that's going on in the Western countries, especially from your Christian background?
And you know, this thing, unfortunately, is imposed on people. It's imposed on people. And it's confusing children. It's confusing children. The ACDP believes, majority of religions believe, that in the beginning, there was a man and a woman. God created Adam and Eve. Now, because of the influence of the West again, African governments are embracing what comes from the West, what comes from Europe, because they're not thinking for themselves. We have heard that some of them have been told, if you do not change this gender identity, start embracing all and do what as we are doing in the West, then we are not going to give you loans or grants. We are not going to give you. Okay, so now they have become beggars. They are held hostage by these governments abroad. ACDP will go back to the roots, back to our roots, because we know the majority of people agree with us. The majority of people know that God created a man and a woman and nothing in between. And that's our position.
Fantastic. So the last question I've got for you is really around the WHO. So the WHO suggested a treaty this year that would basically allow them to have sovereignty over member states and tell them when they should lock down and when they shouldn't. What's your view on ceding South Africa's sovereignty to the WHO?
We will fight that with everything in us. We are also on the verge of filing papers to oppose the new regulations that the minister wants to impose on the country. Regulations that will allow Minister of Health, if passed as they are, to say to WHO, we agree with you, we'll sign that treaty, and we'll all lose our sovereignty. South Africans must know, if you lose your sovereignty, people sitting in Europe will dictate and tell us in South Africa what we must do. All the rights we have are going to be violated, are going to be trampled upon. South Africans must rise up and oppose this thing. This, I believe, is from hell.
It's interesting that the ANC government, which fought against Western imperialism, seems to almost be re-embracing it via the back door.
Definitely. They have forgotten. Actually, they are betraying their own people. The ANC government is betraying South Africans. They have forgotten what they fought for. They fought for the right to choose. That's why when the ACDP opposed even what the WHO wanted to do, even with the vaccines, the ACDP opposed. The main word we're using, the important word we're using was choice. People must give them the choice. ANC went into foreign lands to wage terrorist warfare. They were struggling for South Africans to be given the right to choose. Choose where you want to study. Choose where you want to live. Choose where you want to work. The freedom of choice. They fought for that. Today, they've forgotten that. They are imposing lockdowns because Europe says impose lockdowns. So ACDP is saying to South Africans, wake up before it's too late. We can never allow us as a nation to lose our sovereignty. And because these guys are deceptive, they are liars. They don't bluntly tell people it is about sovereignty. Some of them are trying to defend, no, we will not lose our sovereignty. They are lying to people. They want to sell our sovereignty, and we are standing as the ACDP and say, not while we are alive, not while they steal the ACDP. We believe in choice. We believe in choice. South Africans, please, if you did not know, get more information about what WHO wants to do. We disagree with them because they want to strip us of the right to choose.
So the DRSA platform, which obviously allows public participation on government legislation, had over 300,000 submissions on the regulations that the government put forward on the health amendments. And in a recent news article, DRSA announced that they had reviewed some of the government's correspondence, and the government had labeled public participation as, and I'm quoting, they called them terrorists and sabotagers of the government's agenda. And in the government's own documentation from the health department, they said that they felt that public participation in these things was immaterial and they were going to do it regardless. What's your view on them taking that line with DRSA and public participation?
Anybody who says DSA and all those who participated are terrorists must tell government you are the terrorists. Those people are right to stand for their future. Government must stop lying to South Africans. They must stop saying we are consulting people when they've already made up their minds. On this one, we are saying all DSA, those who have participated in that survey and that petition, please don't give up. Keep on speaking for the sake of your children and grandchildren. We will keep on speaking. Sometimes people might think that our speaking is not helping. It does help. Let us be persistent and stand for what we believe and sign petitions and say we refuse, we do not want to lose our sovereignty as a nation.
Well, I know you've got another meeting to go off to, so I'm going to thank you very much for taking the time to interview with me. I know it's been a bit of a difficult process with the internet and technology, but I hope that our viewers have really enjoyed it. I know I've enjoyed talking to you, and it's been a real great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Byron. Have a blessed day, sir.
And you, my friend.
I appreciate it.